You just paid for a war that ended 79 years ago. Check your paycheck. That federal withholding? World War II. That's not history. That's your money, right now, flowing through a system designed in 1943, when the government needed to fund the largest military operation in human history. They promised it was temporary. They lied. But here's what they don't teach you. World War II didn't just win the war. It created the entire architecture of modern American capitalism. Your 401k, your mortgage, the dollar in your pocket, the fact that you can buy a house or go to college, or that your grandmother gets a social security check. All of it, every single piece of the financial system you interact with daily, was either created or fundamentally transformed between 1941 and 1945. 4 years. That's all it took to build the machine that runs your economic life. August 1945. Japan surrenders. Americans celebrate. Economists panic. The question everyone's asking, what happens when 12 million soldiers come home and the war factories shut down? The smart money says America is about to collapse into another Great Depression. Industrial production has to drop by half. Unemployment will explode. The boom is over. Except none of that happens. Something else happens instead. Something nobody predicted. The greatest economic expansion in human history begins. And it starts because of decisions made in secret meetings you've never heard about, by men whose names you don't know, using financial weapons that didn't exist before the war. Let me show you the mechanism. 1940. Before Pearl Harbor. The United States economy is smaller than it was in 1929. The Great Depression is still happening. Unemployment is 14%. Industrial production is stagnant. Wall Street is dead. The Dow Jones is trading where it was in 1905, 35 years of going nowhere. Banks are scared. Nobody's investing. Capital is frozen. Then December 7th, 1941. Everything changes. Not because of patriotism, because of a financial innovation so powerful it would reshape capitalism itself. The problem? America needs to build the largest military force in history. Immediately. 16 million men under arms, 50,000 aircraft, hundreds of ships, millions of tons of steel, rubber, copper, aluminum. The math is insane. Federal spending goes from $9 billion in 1940 to $98 billion in 1945. That's not a typo. The government needs to increase spending by 10 times in 4 years. There's no historical precedent. There's no economic model for this. And here's the real problem. Printing that much money should cause hyperinflation. Germany, 1923. Money becomes worthless. The economy collapses. So how do you fund a war without destroying your currency? The answer comes from a 32-year-old economist at the Treasury Department named Henry Morgenthau Jr., and his plan is brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Instead of just printing money, he's going to make Americans lend the government their savings, voluntarily. Through the largest propaganda campaign in history combined with financial engineering that's never been tried before. War bonds. But not like World War I bonds. Something new. Something designed to do two things simultaneously. Fund the war and control inflation by sucking money out of the economy. Here's how it works. The government sells bonds to everyone. Movie stars sell them. Children collect dimes. Employers automatically deduct war bond purchases from paychecks. By 1945, 85 million Americans own war bonds. That's 65% of the population. They've collectively loaned the government $185 billion. But here's what nobody tells you. Those bonds don't just fund the war. They create the first mass investment culture in American history. Before World War II, stocks and bonds are for rich people. After World War II, regular Americans think of themselves as investors. The psychological shift is enormous, and Wall Street is paying attention. But that's just the beginning. The real transformation happens with something called the Bretton Woods Agreement. July 1944. The war isn't even over yet. Allied victory looks likely but isn't certain, and 730 delegates from 44 countries meet at a hotel in New Hampshire to redesign the entire global financial system. The goal: make sure the economic chaos of the 1930s never happens again. The chaos that led to fascism. The chaos that led to war. They're going to create a new world order. And the United States is going to run it. The man who designs this system is John Maynard Keynes, the most famous economist alive. British, brilliant, dying. He has heart problems. His doctors say stop working. He can't stop. He knows this is his last chance to build something that might prevent another war. His plan: create an international currency called the Bancor. No single country controls it. Trade imbalances get automatically corrected. It's elegant. It's fair. It gets destroyed by the Americans. The American negotiator is Harry Dexter White, Treasury official, ruthless. His counter-proposal: the US dollar becomes the world's reserve currency. Every other currency pegs to the dollar. The dollar pegs to gold at $35 per ounce. America holds most of the world's gold. America controls the system. Keynes fights it. He loses. He's negotiating from weakness. Britain is bankrupt from the war. America is rich. America has the leverage. The Bretton Woods Agreement gets signed. The dollar becomes the global currency. And here's what that means for you, right now, in 2024. Every international transaction in oil, gold, wheat, microchips, everything, gets priced in dollars. If Japan wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they need dollars first. This creates permanent demand for US currency. It means America can print more money than any other country without causing inflation, because there's global demand absorbing those dollars. It means the Federal Reserve essentially controls the world economy. It means your dollars are more valuable than they should be because the entire world needs them. This is called exorbitant privilege. France named it that in 1965. They were angry about it. They're still angry about it. And it all started at that hotel in New Hampshire in 1944. But let me show you where this gets really interesting. The soldiers come home. 12 million of them. 1945 to 1946. The economists are still predicting disaster. How do you employ 12 million people when the war factories are shutting down? How do you prevent social chaos when men trained to kill can't find work? The answer is the GI Bill, Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. It's sold as a thank you to veterans. It's actually the most sophisticated economic stimulus in history, disguised as charity. Here's what it does. Free college for veterans, government-backed home loans with zero down payment, unemployment benefits for 1 year while finding work. The cost: $95 billion between 1945 and 1956. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $1 trillion today. It's massive. And here's the mechanism that changes everything. Those home loans. Before the GI Bill, homes require 50% down payment. Only rich people own homes. Most Americans rent. The GI Bill creates the 30-year mortgage with government backing. Zero down. Low interest. Suddenly home ownership explodes. In 1940, 44% of Americans own homes. By 1960, it's 62%. That's not just a number. That's the creation of the American middle class. But here's what nobody tells you. Those mortgages create a secondary revolution on Wall Street. Banks can now bundle those government-backed mortgages and sell them as securities. It's the beginning of securitization, the beginning of the financial engineering that leads directly to mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, the entire shadow banking system that causes the 2008 financial crisis. The seeds are planted in 1944. It takes 64 years to explode. Same mechanism. Government-backed mortgages, turned into securities, sold to investors. In 1950, it's building the middle class. In 2008, it's destroying the global economy. Same tool, different hands. Different. Now watch what happens with those college benefits. 8 million veterans use the GI Bill to go to college. Before the war, college is for the elite. 4% of Americans have bachelor's degrees. After the GI Bill, higher education becomes middle class. Universities expand, research explodes. The technology boom of the 1950s and 60s, the innovations that lead to Silicon Valley, the computer revolution, all of it is funded by veterans using GI Bill money to study physics and engineering. MIT's enrollment doubles. Stanford's graduate programs explode. These aren't accidents. They're the downstream effects of a wartime financial decision made in 1944. But let's go back to Wall Street itself, because something else is happening that's even more important. During the war, the government needs Wall Street to sell those war bonds. Investment banks become bond dealers. They learn to market securities to regular Americans. They build the infrastructure for mass retail investing. After the war, that infrastructure doesn't go away. It pivots. Now they're selling stocks instead of bonds. The New York Stock Exchange launches its first national advertising campaign in 1954. Own your share of American business. It works. In 1945, 4 million Americans own stocks. By 1965, it's 20 million. The retail investor is born. Your grandmother buying shares of General Electric in 1958. That's a World War II invention. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. That whole system I just described, the one that created mass prosperity, it's built on something nobody wants to talk about. Permanent military spending. Look at the numbers. Federal spending in 1940 before the war, $9 billion. Federal spending in 1947 after the war, $34 billion. It never goes back down. Even in peacetime, military spending stays at World War II levels. Why? Because in 1950, the National Security Council produces a document called NSC 68. It's classified. It argues that permanent military mobilization is necessary to contain Soviet expansion. But it also argues that permanent military spending is necessary to prevent another depression. The economy is now addicted to defense contracts. Let me show you what that means. 1956. President Eisenhower, former five-star general, warns about the military-industrial complex. He knows it's becoming too powerful, but he can't stop it. Because by 1956, defense spending is 10% of GDP. Lockheed, Boeing, General Dynamics, these companies employ millions. Congressional districts depend on defense contracts. Closing a military base becomes political suicide. The system is locked in. And here's the pattern you need to see. Every American war since 1945 has been funded the same way World War II was funded. Through borrowing, through bonds, through expanding the money supply. Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. Every single one increases the national debt. Every single one grows the financial sector. Every single one makes Wall Street richer. Vietnam War. Defense spending explodes. Military contractors profit. But something breaks. In 1971, Nixon ends the gold standard. The Bretton Woods system that started in 1944 collapses. Why? Because America printed too many dollars fighting Vietnam. France and Germany start demanding gold instead of dollars. The US doesn't have enough gold. Nixon closes the gold window. Bretton Woods is dead. But the dollar stays the global reserve currency anyway, because by 1971, the whole world is locked into dollar-denominated trade. Oil is priced in dollars. Debt is denominated in dollars. Central banks hold dollar reserves. The system survives the death of its own foundation. That's how powerful World War II made the dollar. Iraq and Afghanistan. $8 trillion in total costs according to Brown University's Costs of War project. How is it funded? The same way World War II was funded. Borrowing. The national debt goes from $6 trillion in 2001 to $28 trillion in 2021. But unlike World War II, there's no war bonds campaign, no mass participation, no shared sacrifice. It's funded through treasury auctions bought by foreign governments, pension funds, and the Federal Reserve itself through quantitative easing. It's World War II financial mechanics without World War II social cohesion. The profits go to defense contractors and Wall Street. The debt goes to you. Here's the final irony that nobody wants to acknowledge. World War II created the most prosperous middle class in human history. But it did it through a specific configuration: mass mobilization, shared sacrifice, high marginal tax rates, strong unions, government investment in education and infrastructure, financial regulation that limited Wall Street risk-taking. Every war since World War II has used the financial mechanisms without the social framework. Borrowing without shared sacrifice, military contracts without mass employment, financial engineering without financial regulation. We kept the parts that benefit Wall Street and discarded the parts that built the middle class. Your paycheck withholding? That started in 1943 as a temporary wartime measure. It's still here. Your mortgage? GI Bill innovation. Your 401k? Created in 1978 as companies dismantled the pension system that World War II unions had fought for. The dollar as global reserve currency? Bretton Woods, 1944. The national debt? $36 trillion and counting, built on World War II borrowing mechanisms applied to every conflict since. The military-industrial complex? NSC 68, written in 1950, still operating today. So here's the question nobody asks, but everybody should. Did World War II save capitalism, or did it create a version of capitalism that only works during crisis? The war solved the Great Depression not through free markets, but through massive government intervention, price controls, rationing, 94% top marginal tax rates, and the largest industrial planning operation in history. It wasn't capitalism that won the war. It was government mobilization of capital. And after the war, we kept calling it capitalism while maintaining permanent military mobilization and permanent government intervention in financial markets. Look at your life right now. Your student loans exist because college costs exploded after states defunded public universities that the GI Bill made possible. Your housing costs are insane because housing became a financial asset instead of shelter. A transition that started with securitized mortgages. Your retirement depends on a 401k instead of a pension. Pensions that unions won in the post-war boom. The prosperity machine that World War II built had specific components. We dismantled half of them and kept the other half. The half we kept, the financial engineering. The half we discarded, the shared sacrifice. Here's what I can tell you with certainty. The financial system you live in was designed in 4 years between 1941 and 1945 by people trying to win a war. It wasn't designed for the world we have now. It wasn't designed for peacetime. It wasn't designed for sustainability. It was designed for crisis. And maybe that's why it only seems to work during crisis. Every financial expansion since 1945 has been driven by either war or war-level government intervention. Post-war boom, Cold War defense spending, dot-com bubble funded by defense research, housing bubble funded by government mortgage programs, post-2008 recovery funded by quantitative easing that makes World War II borrowing look modest. The machine works, but it only works one way: through expansion, through borrowing, through creating new assets to securitize and new wars to fund. The question you should be asking isn't whether this is sustainable. It's obviously not. The question is, what happens when it stops? Because unlike World War II, where Americans collectively owned war bonds and had skin in the game, the current system's debt is held by foreign governments and financial institutions. When this breaks, and patterns suggest it will, there's no shared social contract to hold it together. Just creditors and debtors. Just Wall Street and everyone else. That's the legacy of the war that made Wall Street. It built the most prosperous economy in history, and it built the architecture for its own unraveling. Same blueprint, different outcome. The tools that saved capitalism in 1945 might be the tools that break it in 2045. And just like in 1940, nobody sees it coming until it's already here.